Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So first of all, before I jump into today's video, my last three videos, I wanted to just comment on them because it seems like the tone may have, maybe rubbed off wrong on some people. But this is just some of the things that go on within the Division community. As a content creator, you get to share your opinion, and that's kind of one of the best things about the community. And you guys also get to share your opinions on this platform, and I read your comments. So what I did was, before I made these series of critique videos, I made one nice video as kind of a sandwich method. The first video was how to overcome the boredomness that a Division 2 may pose to some people, and then I made my three critique videos. And so now I'm going to close up the sandwich by making a positive outlook kind of video on some of my favorite games ever, based on games I've played over the course of time. And this is just one way to share ideas with other players in the community, because I want to see in the comment section what games you enjoy playing. So maybe if you can give me your top 3, top 4, top 5 games that you've enjoyed playing, I'll be very happy to check some of them out if I have the time, and kind of do some research in order to see if I'll be able to play these games or if I'll be able to enjoy them as well. All right, let's jump in. Now I'm going in no order of relevance, just out of the top of my head, because I feel like I'll do better just to share how I feel about these games. So the first game that's going to be on my list definitely is going to be the Batman Arkham City game. Now, Arkham City is a big game that really kind of pushed me into the Batman franchise. And even though a lot of people say, Arkham Asylum is one of their best games, the first game I ever played was Arkham City. Arkham City really opened my eyes to this new generation type development of a single player, third person perspective type game with one of my favorite superheroes. And I think that game knocked it out of the park in terms of story, combat, mechanics, everything. In fact, up till this year in January, I think I still played some more Arkham City, and this game is quite old. I think it was a 2013 release in the PlayStation 3 era, maybe even older. I may be wrong. No, the PS4 came out in 2013. I'm sorry. So probably 2 years before that, somewhere around 2011. And this game was one of my favorites. Straight up and hands down will still be in my library of my favorite games. Followed by that will be in a different category, and this is a sporting category, is FIFA Street. Now, this is not the FIFA games that are being played in the sense of the big pitch, ultimate team. No, this is a FIFA Street game that was developed in the PS3 and Xbox One time frame. This game really took up a lot of my patience, a lot of my time, because back then I was still young, newly married, not a dad yet. And so I just poured a lot of time and was teaching my wife, who is from a different country, the game of soccer by using this really small pitch type game. And it was so much fun. There were so many different modes, so many things that made it stand out, in the sense that it was not a traditional soccer game. It was a street type soccer game, and I really enjoyed it. So if you've not checked it out, make sure you check it now. Even it's so crazy that the whole FIFA community have been asking EA for a FIFA Street game, but I think the reason they haven't made it is because it's not going to be profitable. You all know how EA is. If it's not going to be profitable, they're going to leave it alone. But this year, they're seeming that they're going to bring some kind of street football into the FIFA 20 franchise, but we have not gotten a lot of details from that. But that's how much of an impression this game makes in the sporting community. Followed by that is another story-driven game, which is going to make up most of my list, and this is Uncharted 2. Not Uncharted 1. Uncharted 1 made a very good impression, but Uncharted 2. Now, why Uncharted series is very critical in my whole gaming library is because not just only is it one of my favorite games, it's one of my wife's favorite games. And so with the Uncharted series, we were able to play the first one, and then when we played the second one, the story just blew us out of the water. Anything that has to do with adventure, immersion, puzzle solving, those things really resound well in this house, especially with a story and a plot that really do well with, people like us who enjoy just a slow-paced, slow progression type of, game. And these things all come together to make Uncharted Uncharted 2 specifically, one of the very best games that I have played, hands down. Now, we have played all the other Uncharted games, including Lost Legacy, but Uncharted 2 still seems to be that game that continues to resound with us. Uncharted 4 came close, but it seemed like there was something missing from that game. And I think I understand exactly what it was. There was a lot of internal transformations going on within Naughty Dog before that game was concluded, and you could somewhat feel it. Like, I went back to try to play the game again, and I could see, oh wow, there really was something kind of missing from this game. Even though the game shipped, it seemed like it missed one little thing that would have made it pretty much one of my best games. Now, let's move on to another game that you guys probably are wondering will be on this list, and that is Tom Clancy's The Division. The first Division game is pretty much one of, I would say, all-time best games that I've played, hands down. The game literally inspired me to start a YouTube channel covering video games, and not just covering video games, but specifically covering The Division. Now, I have played The Division on multiple, fronts, on multiple platforms. Played on PS4, I played on the PC. I currently play on the PC, but that game really showed me that there is something better than just a regular shooter out there. It's a looter shooter, one of the first, if not the first looter shooter I'd ever played. I grew up playing sports games, and so this game really resounded to me in the sense that I could do builds, I could tweak numbers. I never really liked math as a little kid until then I started paying bills, and I was like, oh my gosh. So looking at the mathematical side of The Division and how those numbers could affect my weapons, could affect my gear, my survivability, was actually very cool. I was trained as a scientist in university. Even though I hated math, I came to understand that, okay, this is a very critical part of, my degree. And so seeing The Division to me was like school. Watching videos from content creators telling me about 14% critical hit chance and 30%, and I was like, whoa, what do you mean 7-second cooldown? And I started to get into all these things, which made for me The Division one of my favorite games till date. All right, enough with the Division stuff. You guys probably already knew that if you're from the Gaming Daddy community. Another game that I would say really struck a chord with me in regard to a story-driven game, in regard to progression, gameplay, plot, scenery, setting, everything, is The Last of Us. This game, according to a lot of people, is one of the best games they've played. Granted, there's a whole bunch of other people who say there's nothing special about The Last of Us. I think they live under a rock, and they probably live in like Iceland under some big glacier. So they don't really, participate in everything else in human civilization, those who actually say things like this. But I'll forgive them because they're probably gamers too. But I feel like this is probably one of the best written games that is out there. The story, the plot, the gameplay, the suspense, the intensity of the game is one of those games that I definitely will recommend for people who, in retrospect, may not be playing a lot of the PS4 exclusives, to look around and find a cheap PS4 if they can find one, and purchase just because of a game like this. I mean, I've also mentioned the Uncharted games, so you start to see how these, exclusives kind of stack up. That will bring the defensive case for you to actually make your purchase of a PS4 or your transition. All right, Last of Us, the second one's coming out, and as crazy as it sounds, a lot of us are probably looking forward to it. Another game that literally made a good impression for me is God of War, the 2018 version. I first played the first God of War games on PS2, never really got into it. It seemed like somebody was running around hacking and slashing things, and some people will be like, oh, but those were the best ones. And hey, I can understand. At that time, those games, they looked really good on the PlayStation 2, don't get me wrong. But when they pulled out the God of War for 2018, it was one of those, I wonder how this game is going to look, because, the internet can actually, change and influence your perception about a game, especially when some people started talking about, Kratos having a son, Atreus, and people said, no. We don't want Dad of War. We want Kratos, the angry, crazy version. But after a while, when people started to see that this game had taken the development and the writing team over there at Santa Monica Studios, a lot of, thoughts to transform Kratos into a much more relevant person. And I'm not, speaking in terms of the politics or the social side of things, but just a much more likable character who many people, gamers who were of, the average gamer age around the 35-year range, could really relate to. This game definitely won Game of the Year, hands down, from the community's opinion of what a Game of the Year should have looked like. This game literally rocked every single game that came out with it that year. I mean, yes, there were some other good entries that also came out in the year that God of War was released, like Red Dead Redemption, or, you know, if you even wanted to go crazy, you could say maybe even Spider-Man, PS4 Spider-Man. But nonetheless, it seemed like it had enough time to hold down the market around the time it was released and influence a lot of the community's good graces. And so people really smiled upon the game, and that made it one of the better games based on this particular PS4 generation. And finally, a game that a lot of people probably don't know, but a lot of people will probably know, is a game called Dead to Rights. This is pretty much, hands down, my favorite game of all time. I never even got to beat the game till date. I'm still looking around to see if I can find myself a copy in order for me to complete this game, maybe someday if I have time. And this game was my first PC game, in sense of I first had this computer when I was quite young. I was a teenager then, and I was learning media, digital arts and all that stuff. And I finally got my hands on this game, and I started playing it, and believe it or not, this game really had me hooked. It was something different. It was a third-person shooter. I've always liked third-person games. If you notice, my list is full of them. And I pretty much, in my opinion, thought this was one of the best things ever, because he had a dog, he had a story, he had many elements toward the game that made it an action-packed game that was so interesting. It kept me there. Like every time I turned on and you know, booted my computer and started this game, it just kept me all through the time of the experience. And I remember playing it in West Africa, where there was almost no power supply. So when I had little power supply, I'll take a few hours to do some Photoshop tutorials, and then I would jump in on this game, and it was so exciting. And so this is my list of favorite games that I've, you know, enjoyed all through. Now, as I was making this list, I then remembered that there's another game that I actually really like, and I'm sorry it happens to come to the back burner, but this is one game that I've actually put on the forefront on my channel, and that's Metro Exodus. Now, I really did enjoy Metro Exodus, and even though the game had a lot of, you know, controversy, and the developers or publishers, whoever made the decisions to make this game an Epic exclusive, made the biggest blunder in gaming circa 2019. They literally messed the whole thing up. This game would have received massive acclaim. I think the so-called 30% that Steam was taking, or whatever your position or your stance in it, I think the developers would have recovered that over and many times over if that game had shown up on Steam and more people made the purchase. It was already the most pre-ordered game on Steam before it was released. The reason they went ahead to take, you know, pretty much, you know, dirty money, that's what I call it, exclusivity money on the PC platform, is dirty money, because it usually rubs off wrong on the consumer. It may seem advantageous for the developers, but the consumers are the people who continue to stay after the game has passed. They're the people who continue to buy the next titles. And so Metro Exodus is definitely one that I feel like they had a good story, and it's the one exception for a first-person shooter that's made it into my list. I've also enjoyed other first-person shooters, but Metro Exodus is the one that took the, you know, the medal for an action game with a story. You could feel the heart and the soul which the developers, which the story writers and everybody put into this game, that made it something of a, you know, of a, just, I would say, a miraculous entry into the action shooter first person genre. All right, this is my video for, I would say, you know, sandwiching of the content that I've put out the last few days. Thank you guys so much. I want to hear what your favorite games are. I want to be able to, you know, go and cross-reference and see if I'm the only one crazy that has this list of games. And I just wanted to, you know, have a conversation that is not focusing on all the current problems that we have in the Division 2 currently. I genuinely think the Division 2 is going to become a better product, but right now it seems like there's so many missing opportunities, but I hope the developers are able to see where the community is coming from. They might be really worn out because of our whining and complaining, but we are passionate and we want the game to be much better than it is. And so that's where we are coming from. All right, that is all I have for today. Thank you very much for your time and your audience, and I guess I'll see you in the next video. Peace.